Hi, my name's Sean Connors and this is Outsiders and welcome back to my channel. And today I'm going to be tackling a question set by T-Walker13 with sound effects from Boggle in the background. And T-Walker's question 13, or Tanner Walker, was he's got an idea for a roleplay system. He wanted to have my thoughts on how to build a system and that sort of thing, any tips and advice I can give. This is an excellent question. I say that every time and I do apologise, but I try to take the best questions and I try to respond to those. It's okay, my darling. Calm down. Thank you. She's a little bit strange like that, the Boggle. But it's a great question because it's dear to every DM type. I think every DM over who's ever refereed, it'd be very rare not to have met someone who's tried to tinker with a system, tried to build their own, tried to come up with something. Most DMs have their own house rules with something. So it's quite a natural progression to have played for a period of time and then say, yeah, I want to build my own system. I think I can do a better job than these jokers. And often, you know what? Often DMs, some DMs can build bloody good systems. I mean, I make quite a good living out of tinkering with people's ideas and giving them advice and stuff and marketing my own little strategies and stuff. Have I ever had my own system published? Ironically enough, no. I mean, I've had ideas taken and used, but not my own system. So it is a very difficult thing. And I think the first thing you have to do is just weigh up some very basic facts. The first one is that it's unlikely to be the next D&D. That's not to take anything away from it, just unlikely. You don't do it for that. You do it because, exactly like you said, it's your baby, it's your love affair. Yeah, you're going to pour your heart and soul into it, and you're going to try and do the best you can to create an experience for your players. And that's the next part to this. You got to know your players. Webhead said it best when he said, you get into this hobby what you put out, and that is so true on this subject. You have to put a lot of time and investment of time into it to create a really good system. And I apologise for moving away from the camera for a split second, and I know it's unprofessional, but I'm just going to pacify the Bogglemeister with a quick throw of something, which should always work. Not anything heavy. Anybody out there? That'll normally work every time. She likes soft things, don't you, Boggle? Yeah, that's good. Anyway, so you've got to start with the base. You've got to find that common ground for your players. Is it something your players are going to like? If it is, you're already on the right lines. You now need to think, what sort of style of game is it going to be? Is it going to be fantasy, futuristic, something modern day? Is it going to be horror based? The basics. Is it that? I like fantasy systems myself. That's my speciality. What is it that is going to separate your system? Is it going to be very rules heavy? Is it going to be very rules light? Is it going to be a tactical combat style game with a lot of detail? Is it going to be combat light? You've got to look at all those factors, and then that's before you sit down and then sort of say to yourself, how am I going to bring this thing to life? Now, you really, all the time, if you want to build a good system for you and your players, everything you do, you want to try and separate it. You either two options really. You can either take the best bits from certain systems and amalgamate them together to try and create something that's very unique to your game, much your own flavour. And that's another part to it. Whatever your style or system is, you want to try and tailor it to a theme. So you want to try and tailor it to something that you really want it to become. So, for example, at the moment I'm working on Liber Fanatica, so that's the Criminal Empire. So if I was building a system for Liber Fanatica, the Criminal Empire, obviously I'd want it to be a very thief-based style game, very skill-heavy style game, probably set in, a world where it's probably at different levels, but within probably a city complex, probably a thieves guild, probably the different layers of the thieves guild right the way out to the floor, probably trying to maybe make the characters start off as minor thieves and making their way right up to the big bosses. That just straight away, it sounds interesting to me, and I've already got, my head's spinning on ideas just from thinking about that I think, wow, that'd be really interesting. So you've got to have a theme in mind about what you're trying to achieve, so you can fit it into what your players would like, and the mechanics need to fit the theme, because otherwise they become disjointed. I think it doesn't have that collective whole is the only word that I can think of that would really work here, but it doesn't. It's got to have a collective feel to it, so everything you do is right. Then you can start sort of penciling out the basics. So are you going to go with a traditional stat-based style game? So again, give you an example. It's something I'm going to try and throw some ideas in and help as well. everybody does the same thing. So you might see one system, we'll take Dungeons and Dragons, and it will have the word strength used for strength. Another system might use the word physicality, physique. Exactly, Boggle, exactly. Does that really matter? You know, does that is there any difference there? They're just names for the same thing, really. They don't achieve anything. It might be more interesting to have a system where you put stat points in and actually receive physical, little blocks, maybe. So when you do something strength based, you take a block off until you rested, and then you get a certain amount back. Actually, it's a really good idea. So I mean, that sort of thing. You see where I'm immediately going there. You know, those sort of things can add a big difference. It could be that could be a token. That could become something a little more, because obviously that person's used up some energy. Whether they were in a fight, okay, take a bit of strength away. I'm going to take a bit of constitution away because you're physically tired. I'm going to take a bit of this away. You know, suddenly that's all interesting, because you suddenly think, well, that's a different slant on the stat stroke. Because with D&D, you've got physical stats. In Warhammer, although you have stats, you have fatigue and stamina, and physical fatigue and mental fatigue. And you're weighing those sort of things up to fit your type of game. So you've always got to work out in your own mind what it is that you ultimately want to achieve. You know, so I'm just trying to give you some ideas. You then need to think, okay, I've got an idea how I want the stats to look. I know what that wants to be. So even if that's a rolling up thing, whether that's you've got a certain amount of points to divide up, whether it's based on race and age or background or various things like that, all those factors come in. You've got to look at the balance of what you're doing. Does it seem to balance correctly? Are you favouring one thing or another, or is there options for all the players? And simply put, if you take yourself back away from anything you do and you look at it in the cold light of day, or get someone to look at it, like myself, I would normally spot quickly if something is too good that anybody worth their salt will take it. It generally means it's unbalanced, and you now need to rethink what you were trying to do. So you have to look at it that way when you're building from the ground up. Next sort of factors you might look at is skills. So you might look at the skills of the game. Is it going to be skill heavy? If we took my original sort of thoughts there about the roguish one, you'd want it to be very skill heavy, skills that are going to be very important later on. And again, it sort of makes sense, you know, when you think about, you know, what I've just did right at the beginning, where I was thinking about having like blocks or tokens where when you give up a certain amount of yourself and you have less and less, it's like your luck running out. And that would be the same with, you've got skills like for open locks, so you have a certain amount, maybe 10 blocks because you're really good at it, and you open the door, it takes 2 away, then you open another one, that takes another one, and eventually, you know, you wear yourself out, or you need to replace your tool or whatever. It's just an idea at this stage. I'm just formulating ideas for you to think about, but you get the gist. It's just to get your mind, you know, thinking about the sort of things you got in your arsenal, the sort of thing you want to achieve, and then, you know, running that by someone. What we really would need beyond this question, to be honest with you, Tanner, is we'd want more meat on the bone about what you're trying to achieve, and then I can help a little bit further. I may well catch you on my Skype channel this Sunday, which I go live on, and thank you for all those that have joined. So you're looking at skills here, and then you're moving on to combat. You're then looking at things like the spells if it's a fantasy system. If it isn't a fantasy system and you're talking sci-fi, what degree of technology? Is it broken technology where they were once great, something's happened, been a cataclysmic event, many of the race has been split away from its homeland, and technology is 100 years out of date, and, you know, they don't have the technology they once had, etc., 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 because they can't repair and replace. You've got to think of all those things. So there's a plethora of stuff that you've got to go through before you reach a conclusion on a system. And then the biggest thing is putting it all to paper. And that's the hardest thing. And keeping it organised so that people understand what you're trying to do. At the beginning, because it's your baby, it doesn't really matter that you don't have to write every little nook and cranny detail down. As long as you understand it, that's fine. As long as you know how to roll up characters, as long as you understand what the mechanics are, as long as you can explain that. And then always have at the back of your mind one key thing that you do, which is this. When you do finally put this system, your baby, in front of your players, and they run it and stuff, they will give you feedback, great feedback. Take on board the feedback and change and alter and adapt the feedback that you're receiving to try and make it as good an experience as you can get. And then, you know what, if you really feel it's doing well and you've really done a good job with it, then try and go through people like myself. Try and go through Drive-Through RPG. Try and have a look at getting your game marketed. and stuff like that. And there are a number of DMs who've done that here on this channel. RPG Channel is one of the guys that has marketed a mini system on the RPG, on Drive-Through RPG. And you know, full kudos to him. He did ask me to review his system. I must be honest, at the time that it came in, unfortunately, I'd just come up to my busiest period of time of that year. It really was busy for me, and I really have the time to give him much feedback at all, which was unfortunate. I'd like to have given him some, but time ran away. But in your case, I would make an exception, Tanner. I'd have to here. You've done a good job putting a great question to me, and I will end it this way. You've got a lot of food to think about and to eat here. There's a lot to go through. I'll be really interested to see what you do and what your direction is that you want to go in. And if I can be of any service to you, the Outsiders is always here. Anyway, listen, I've been Outsiders. This has been a question about mechanics and building systems. A brilliant question. I've only touched on it slightly. We may well come back to this because it's such a big question. As feedback and comments come in, we may look at them in more detail. Anyway, until the next time, guys, take care of yourselves. Have a great weekend. And see some of you Sunday night. Till then, bye-bye.